First, we were talking about a title race. Then we sent top fours in the bag. Then we got absolutely humbled by Liverpool. Liverpool then lost to Bournemouth. So that means Bournemouth will beat Manchester United 8-0. But before we get there, in May, United did succumb to a 0-0 draw against Southampton at home. Welcome to the United Pubcast. I'm Larry, joined by Tom. And unfortunately, Tom, not the result we wanted to see on a Monday morning.
Yeah, definitely a tricky one to deal with. Very frustrating. And I think maybe someone in the chat or you can answer this as well. I can't tell you the last time Man United beat the team. Whenever we play the team who's 20th on the table, I can't tell you the last time we beat that team. It seems whoever we play when they're bottom, it's a team we always seem to struggle with. That's definitely the feeling. And obviously Southampton gave us a good test. We can get into the ins and outs on why it was maybe a frustrating afternoon in regards to the referee and playing a big chunk with 10 men. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the cards that were dealt in that second half, I think the draw was a fair result because on another day, I think we were pushing for the win at the end, which was good to see. But if injury time went for another 4 or 5 minutes, there's a situation Southampton come away with 3 points. So I'm sure we'll be having a debate whether this is 2 points dropped or 1 point gained. I think it's a little bit of both.
It is a little bit of both before my microphone gets red carded, but we will get into all of it. Casemiro, the performance, the starting 11. Should certain players be sold? There's a poll up on our Twitter account right now. We'll bring that question to you. Lots to rip through. It's going to be a jam-packed 20 to 30 minutes. So sit tight, get involved, and let's rip in. But, Tom, I don't want to waste any more time. Let's bring it to the starting 11. There were a few surprises in there. Maybe not in terms of personnel, but definitely the positions that certain players lined up in. Let's start with Bruno Fernandes, deployed in a deeper role, Jadon Sancho as number 10, and that's certainly the way it started. In terms of the first 33 minutes of football that we saw, what did you make of Bruno's performance in that deeper role, and what did you think of the selection by Erik ten Hag?
Yeah, well, I've made no sort of second last couple of weeks in terms of ideally. Now we can talk about his performance in terms of what we sort of expect of him. But ultimately, I don't mind him in that position. Very brave from Erik ten Hag to go with that middle three. Now, obviously, as I said, we're at home to the team 20th in the league, so that's where you can be a little bit ambitious with team selection. But I do think it was brave, and you want the manager to be brave and sort of go attack in there. Obviously, leave CASEMIRO by himself for the last 2 or 3, 4 years, however long it's been. It seems that at home to those teams, we've sat with two sitting midfielders and think, it's not quite enough at home at Old Trafford against teams like this. You do need to take the game to them. Erik ten Hag has taken the game with Southampton. Now it has changed off the back of the refereeing decision, which we'll get into. But ultimately, I don't mind Bruno there on the ball. I think it changes his game a little bit, for better or for worse. That's up for debate. But ultimately, I was relatively pleased with the starting 11. Obviously, only fault of one person, really. But through no fault of anyone, that it obviously did change half an hour in, and suddenly we're having a different discussion about the starting 11. But ultimately, I think if CASEMIRO stayed on the pitch, I think ultimately we do get over the line with that starting 11 and say Erik ten Hag did his job well.
It's really difficult to assess Bruno's performance and even Sancho's performance to an extent, isn't it? I mean, once you're down a player, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're prime Real Madrid that won 4 out of 5 Champions League titles. I don't care if you're Barcelona with Xavi, Messi, and Iniesta. When it's 10 versus 11 in a field as big as a football pitch, it's always going to impact you. I don't care who you are. But, Tom, let's talk about that red card. It's time we're there. Casemiro, he goes in. His studs are up. It's on the shin. He gets the ball first, but his boots are up. His studs are up. He collects a player on the shin. I've seen similar tackles this season where it hasn't been a red card. What do you make of the tackle? But not only what do you make of the tackle, what do you make of the consistency and the interpretation of that tackle that we've seen so far this season?
Two different debates. As a Manchester United fan, I will sit here and blast the referee, say this. I saw this tackle on Saturday. This wasn't given as a red card, so this shouldn't be as a red card. And that's me as a fan. I'm watching that say, bullshit, that's not a red card because of what I've seen previously. And if we're going to remain consistent, Casemiro shouldn't have been sent off. At the end of the day, though, it's a red card. It's a clear red card. Ultimately, you can say it's a little bit harsh and unlucky, but ultimately, you mentioned he got the ball first. Nothing to do with the rule. If you've got the ball and I go and tackle you, but then also elbow you in the face, just because I've got the ball first doesn't mean anything. Ultimately, he's made reckless contact with the shin, and that's only on Casemiro. He can have no complaints. If that happened to Marcus Rashford, would be screaming for a red card, and rightly so. Now, I don't think Casemiro look, he's an experienced player. He knows what he's doing. He wants to leave one on the opponent, and that's the way he plays the game. That's what we love him for. Ultimately, he's put himself in a position where he knows when he goes over the ball, because that's the only way your studs are going to go when you do sort of go in that way. The only thing to do is you're going to clean up the player after. And he knows what he's doing there, and he can have no complaints. Now, I think it's unlucky, but he put himself in a tricky position. And as I said, if that's another team, we're screaming for a red card. But then I strip it back to me being a Manchester United fan and talk about decisions previously. And if we want to remain consistent, it shows no consistency. But then the debate is, well, do you stay consistent with wrong decisions and say, okay, that's not a red card because the other ones weren't, so you have a bunch of wrong decisions? Or do you say, okay, they're wrong decisions in the past, let's start getting the decisions right now? So Casemiro, unlucky, this is a red card. It's an interesting one.
To answer your question, something can only be wrong if there is inconsistency. I view it as if a referee or the Referees Association has decided that the way they're going to officiate or adjudicate that type of tackle is if he goes and collects the player first, foul play. And if that's the way that the rule will be interpreted, no problem by me. I think the frustration with fans in anything, when it comes to handballs, when it comes to misconduct on the field, whatever it is, you just want to see consistency. And to your point, as a fan, you watch Saturday, Sunday, you watch other teams play, and you see this type of tackle has been executed time and time again this season. The player does not get a red card. And Erik ten Hag, look, I understand where he's coming from as a manager. He's got Manchester United goggles on. He's saying this guy's played 500 games. He's now got 2 red cards in England. He's trying to put pressure on the referees. I get what Ten Hag is saying. I agree with you, Tom. I think it's a red card. What I will say, though, is if he gets the ball first, I don't know how you can call it. What's the interpretation? Is it misconduct? Is that the actual term that they give? Or foul play?
Reckless, probably.
The frustration I have is if you collect the ball first, there has to be a break in momentum in terms of the impact you have on the player.
Clear difference. Bruno Fernandes against Real Betis going in, not in the goalkeeper. Knows he's going to collect the goalkeeper, simply turns his foot sideways. The moment Casemiro goes in studs first, the only option, where he gets the ball or misses the ball, the out of control nature, and it's reckless, because if something goes wrong with that tackle and misses the ball, the only situation that happens is him collecting the guy's shin. That is why it's reckless, because he's gone in for a decision. If something happens, he's in a position now where it can injure the player. That is why it's reckless. That's why it's a red card. Bruno Fernandes went in very similar on the Betis goalkeeper, just turned his foot sideways. So when he did clean him up, it wasn't showing the studs, which is obviously far less effective and sort of less visual. So Casemiro put himself in that position, and he should do better. And Casemiro's been absolutely brilliant. It's not to blame him. Maybe we can have a different discussion in terms of now, he shouldn't have been sent off against Crystal Palace, but ultimately now he's got to miss 7 Premier League games through suspension. That's not great. And now, again, I don't sort of really critique him too much for that, because I think he's been absolutely brilliant, and I think one of the red cards was extremely harsh. But ultimately, that is a discussion we'll be having. If we're discussing Anthony Martial's fitness record or Luke Shaw's fitness record or someone's form, well, if someone's missing 7 games through suspension, he shouldn't have grabbed him by the collar, even though it's not a red card. It's technically where you put yourself in a position. He's put himself in a position today, and he's missed a big chunk of this season. So, and again, he's been absolutely brilliant. No criticism at all of Casemiro, but ultimately, if we're treating all the players equally, we'll be having a far different discussion if this was someone else. That's right or wrong, I'm not sure. But as a Man United fan, hugely frustrating. I'll scream at the TV that it shouldn't have been a red card. Ultimately, it is.
Yeah, I've got a question on Casemiro. I just want to bring it to the comment. If you are watching the video and you're enjoying the debate, get involved, get around the table, get your comments in. We will read them out. And if you are here, make sure you do hit a like on the video. It does help us a lot. SJ Butt, I thought VAR aren't meant to re-referee. He gave a yellow. So when it's considered foul play or recklessness, then that is when VAR can intervene, SJ Butt. So if you don't know that one, now you do. Gilvanelson Souza, sorry mate, rubbed game. Tom, we'll get into the penalty controversy in a moment, so stay tuned. Absolutely, we'll get to that. And Stephen, nice to see you, mate. 6 Premier League games, one of those is an FA Cup match. But the thing is, it's such a crucial point of the season, and while top 4 looks comfortable, United only need to drop 2 or 3 games, and it's suddenly looking very hairy again. And let me ask you this, Tom. For as good as Casemiro has been this season, if you are Eric Ten Hag, do you have a bit of a concern with his discipline? Do you
No.
try and tone that in a little bit? Do you have a conversation with him, or do you just put this down to purely being unlucky?
It's the way he plays. Who's my favourite ever player?
Roy Keane.
I mean, that's part of his game. If you want the good football and the things he brings, the price you're going to pay is a few red cards a season. What Roy Keane end up on 11 red cards or 8 red cards, I forget what it was. That's going to happen. Now, Casemiro's picked up 2 in a couple of weeks, unfortunately. But you don't want to take away from someone. If that's their game, that's their game. If you want the really good performances, you're going to have to go a few games with him sitting in the stands. That is the price you pay. I've had that debate with many players, maybe around the captain's armband or a change of position, around Casemiro's discipline. As Eric Ten Hag rightly points out, he's played 500 games and it's never happened. Okay, short sample size, a little bit unlucky. One extremely bad referee decision against Crystal Palace, that red card, and one bit of an unfortunate one.
Was it? I mean, like, seriously.
So that's where, okay, we'll take that one out. So the referee does their job and he doesn't get sent off. And now we're saying, okay, just one bit of a dubious tackle, gets sent off. We're only one red card. We're not having a discussion about his discipline. So, look, Eric Ten Hag obviously will have to have a word with him because the eyes are on him now. Every referee will be looking at the Casemiro tackle. So part of Eric Ten Hag's management will be to look and sort of just advise him. So, look, eyes are on you. Let's just be careful. You got to show your experience now. But you wouldn't be changing the way Casemiro plays.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Cassie, all you got to do, mate, side foot. No more studs up, please. Please. If you're going to put your feet up, Casemiro, do it at home on the lounge after putting in a belting performance, which you do 8 out of 10 times, mate. Tom, let's talk about the referees, your favorite topic. Look, I know it's a bare bone, but we have to dig it out. Firstly, I'm going to start with the Marcus Rashford one. He's approaching the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper clips his foot. It's clear as day. The goalkeeper clips his foot. As far as I'm concerned, accidental, yes, I think it's an accident. Clearly not intentional to me. It's still a penalty. He brought down a player in the box when that player had an opportunity to bang that ball in the back of an empty net.
I'm mixed on this one. And look, here I am. I should be agreeing with everyone saying we're absolutely robbed. And I thought the referee was woeful. And I don't think it was so much, he was bad in sort of VAR and referee in these big decisions. It wasn't so much the big decisions, it was his general performance and the referee and the way he's sort of carrying himself. That was my main gripe with him. But in regards to these big decisions, the Marcus Rashford one, I was actually split on this because there is the debate, yes, there's contact. Now, just because there's contact, does that mean it's a penalty? Even though you make contact with someone, does that mean they fall over? That's another debate. The reason I side with this in terms of Marcus Rashford and believe it's a penalty, I always look at a player's genuine reaction. Marcus Rashford knew that Marcus Rashford clipped himself well with his feet, and he knows that would have been visible. But his reaction when he got up, you could tell he was genuine in regard. I've been in this position before, going up to the referee, and he was almost saying, I know I tripped myself, but I'm genuine. It was because I got clipped. That moved my foot into my other foot. And he was genuine in that saying, I know it looked like a dive, but trust me, I got clipped there. And it was a genuine reaction by Marcus Rashford. It wasn't sometimes like you see Bruno Fernandes sort of trying to win something.
They'll just do this with no words.
Sort of this. But Marcus Rashford, you could tell it was a genuine one. No, I'm telling you, I got clipped. Trust me, go and have a look at this. I got clipped. So ultimately there, if Marcus Rashford has gone down because of that, it is a clear penalty. Obviously, that's not going to be given to Manchester United at the moment in terms of the favourable or unfavourable decisions going our way. So, but ultimately, I also come back to it and think, like, yes, there's contact. Has contact made a penalty? Probably not. Now, it's a tricky one.
Let me challenge you on that in a moment. So let's assume you're a rapid winger, okay? I'm chasing you down as the fullback. If I'm chasing you down and because your running motion, your heel clips up, I'm getting closer to you. My knee hits your heel. You then fall down. What's the referee doing?
Yeah, it's such a grey area, and that's where sort of interpretation comes in. If Casemiro's chasing someone down in a striker into the box and they go shoulder to shoulder and Casemiro knocks him over, it's contact. Is it a foul? No, it's not a foul. Like it's one of those ones that always you do need to apply context to it. There are some tricky ones. Ultimately, as a Man United fan, I look at that and sort of Marcus Rashford's sort of reaction, I think it's a penalty, but then ultimately that's at the other end. We're saying, is that enough to go down? Probably not. But in my opinion, that's a 50-50. That's not going to go your way when it's not your day. The other one, the handball, I'll throw it to you. That's not 50-50. That ball has travelled, I don't know, I forget where the cross came in for. It was a Luke Shaw, I forget. That's travelled 20 or 30 metres. Now, I know the guy has fallen over and slipped, and you could say he's a natural, unnatural now. I don't care if it's unnatural or natural. If the ball has travelled 20 metres and it has hit your hand, you have had 20 metres worth of time. Even if the last second you have slipped and now you only have a second to react, it's not point blank range. It has come from 20 metres away and it is clear as day a penalty. Not only it should have been given on the spot. The referee didn't need VAR for it. He had a perfect view and it was a clear handball. But then ultimately for VAR to check that and in slow motion and still refuse to give it, that's tough. Those are the decisions that are going to cost you, not Casemiro's red card. Those decisions, those clear as day penalties, that's what sort of impacts club seasons.
Tom, it was an unprofessional decision. I can't find a better word than saying it was unprofessional. At the end of the day, you and I both, anyone who's played a football game, to be on your knees, that player knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. His shoulders, no one, when you walk in the street, all right, do you walk like this? Do your shoulders?
I've no issue with the natural or unnatural or body silhouette. I've no issue with that. It's simply they could be in an unnatural or natural. If the ball has travelled from 20 metres and hit your arm, you had time to get out of the way. Now, you could argue, Southampton could argue, well, he slipped. So suddenly that's not 20 metres, that's half a metre. Ultimately, though, that's unlucky. That's his fault for not slipping. Stay on your feet. And ultimately, it's clear now. Ultimately, we're not given the decisions at the moment. Does Eric Ten Hag need to come out and put a bit of pressure on the referees? I'm not sure, but it's not falling our way.
Klopp owes Manchester United an apology because since he complained, I want to say in 2021, it was during lockdown, wasn't it? Like when
it was after all the Bruno penalties.
He put
which 99%, only one of those Bruno penalties wasn't a penalty. 9 times out of 10 they were penalties. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
Now 9 out of 10 they're penalties and we're just not getting them. So Jurgen Klopp, masterstroke, mate. Despite all of your efforts, you're still well behind us. Congratulations on the beating Manchester United trophy, by the way. Great victory against Bournemouth over the weekend. It was really enjoyable to see. Well, look, this is a way to cheer ourselves up.
At least Mohamed Salah wasn't taking our penalty if we got it.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. That's guaranteed miss. Tom, let's talk about Manchester United's actual performance. I want to talk about individual players. Now, again, I'll caveat this with, for 2/3 of the match, United are playing with 10 men. In saying that, I thought United still pushed forward, still tried to get a goal, and had opportunities to get the goal. Case in point, we're talking about 2 potential penalty shots. They were in the opposition box. Southampton had their chances. David De Gea absolutely saved United's bacon a couple of times. What did you make of key performers in this game? Because I have to be honest, while United were down, I think the opportunity was still there to win. And I thought so many players from Manchester United just missed the mark.
Yeah. Just in regards to what we know these players can perform like, you can say, yeah, individually maybe not quite at it. Now, yes, as you allude to, there's sort of circumstances as to why maybe individuals weren't at it. My main thing, which we'll discuss maybe a little bit later, looking ahead to Real Betis during the week, the players are running like empty. They've got nothing. Like Bruno Fernandes at the end of the game, the guy can't breathe, and that's not to be critical of him. He's just playing every minute of every game, and he's just got nothing left. He shouldn't be anywhere near the flight to Spain. He needs to put his feet up and rest. But ultimately, that's obviously sort of impacts the performance of individuals as well. I thought Lisandro Martinez had a very good game in regards to any central defender. When you're down to 10 men, you're going to have a busy night. And I thought him and Varane did quite well, but Lisandro Martinez especially. I thought Scott McTominay came on and did a sort of very important job for what Eric Ten Hag would have wanted. Obviously, there was a straight swap. A lot of people would have assumed Fred. Ultimately, in that position, which goes into the McTominay and Fred debate, while Fred has been playing well and been picked above the Scotsman this year, the manager will only trust one, and he will only trust Scott McTominay in a must sort of do situation. When you have Casemiro there or someone else, yeah, throw Fred in maybe in football. But if you have to trust one to do a proper job, obviously any football manager is going to side with Scott McTominay. He had to be the sub. I'm surprised that he didn't make the sub straight away. He waited 5 minutes or so before taking Weghorst off. Weghorst, a tricky game for him up top. I think he is what Weghorst is. He works hard, and sort of we like that. We appreciate that. Is that going to grab you goals on a consistent level to where we need to be? Probably not. But ultimately, here we are. Anthony Martial's fit and he's back, and he's not quite back. So we have to sort of rely on it about Weghorst. So
Ten Hag broke my heart there, man. I was bang. I had all our social media. I was all in on Martial. Didn't even make the bench.
Are you
Ten Hag said
surprised?
he was going to be here. He said he was going to play. Just didn't.
Are you surprised though? Like, do you expect him to be in Spain on the week during the week?
Yeah, I do. I think this
I
was
won't
just a
be
case
shocked
of.
if he's not. I won't be
I think
shocked
it
if
was
he's
just a
not.
case of we'll wait one more game. I think he will because when you consider that these players need a rest, you can give Martial a good chunk of minutes here to get some match rhythm.
Oh yeah, no. Look, maybe it's my emotion. Look, sort of maybe lashing out at his injury record, sort of thing. Fingers crossed he is back, but we made our sort of feelings very clear in regards to his injury record. But
Frustrating.
you're right. You look at Jadon Sancho's performance; he's coming for a lot of criticism off the back of the performance. Now, ultimately, a lot of people don't like this. He's been good since his return. Now, from what we want in terms of the way we view Jadon Sancho when we signed him a £70 million player, or whatever it was, and obviously this tricky winger can go past players, can create, can score goals. That is obviously what we want, and the visual aspect of sort of following football. Ultimately, for what Erik ten Hag wants, like Anthony, it's maybe the other things when maybe the sort of aren't shown on Match of the Day. I know Match of the Day is obviously in the highlights at the moment, but Jadon Sancho is obviously performing quite well for the job that Erik ten Hag needs. Is that enough for us fans? Probably not. And it obviously sort of highlights maybe issues around his future at United. I think he's fine. And again, he's hard to judge on this isolated performance in regards to 10 men, but he's obviously one player who's playing at number 10, then he's playing on the right, then he's playing number 9 in a false 9 position with 10 men. So I think it's hard to judge him on this performance, but ultimately I think he's maybe a little bit of a victim in regards to, a lot of people disagreed with me at the time, but I always thought he was best off the left. I know he wanted him on the right because they gave nice balance. I always thought he was better off the left. You're obviously going to play Marcus Rashford, and rightly so. So I think maybe in terms of when a player is out of the form, play them in their best position. Ultimately, you can't do that at the moment because our best player is Marcus Rashford, so you can't be dropping him. So Jadon Sancho not struggled, but yeah, didn't take his chance as you would like a player to do at home at Old Trafford against the team coming bottom of the table. But other than that, I just went through all these individuals, and ultimately, it's hard to judge when a team is down to 10 men. It is just one of those where I think you do need to sort of pass judgment for the 90 minutes and just sort of move on.
So we did put a bit of a poll up this afternoon, and that poll was asking, if you're given 50 to 60 million pounds in the summer for Jadon Sancho, do you keep or sell him? And this wasn't to be critical of Sancho. I thought it was just a good opportunity to gauge what the feeling in the fan base is at the moment. Because like you say, Tom, I think there's two things that fans look for in a player. Are they playing well? Obvious one in terms of statistics. But the second one is the eye test. And Michael Carrick was a player who failed the eye test for a majority of his Manchester United career. But to anyone who was a football purist looked at him and said, nah, actually, I see 100% what he adds to this team. Jadon Sancho, I'm going to ask you this question. 50 or 60 million? Let's assume 60 million. Who's a club? Chelsea. They love wasting money. Chelsea come in, 60 million pounds. We want Jadon Sancho from you in the summer. What would you do?
No. Well, first, I don't think. I know Chelsea's just an example, and who knows? So first of all, I don't think a club in the current climate is coming in for Jadon Sancho for that money. I don't think United will sell his wages. I think is on over 300,000 a week. So no club is coming in for that money with Jadon Sancho. So he's got to be a Manchester United player next season. I agree with that. I think there is a future with Jadon Sancho. Ultimately, we can have a discussion about, is he going to reach the heights we expect or we want potentially. That's a valid discussion. Ultimately, though, I think he's like Anthony in terms of we watch him, we think, frustrating, he's not quite doing the job. Well, for Erik ten Hag, he's doing the job in terms of, okay, he's not going past plays, but he's keeping the ball. He obviously keeps the ball quite well in the moments that we want him to do more. He maybe loses the ball in terms of maybe a dribble or something, but overall actually performs quite well for the team and provides balance. But it's weird. I see a lot of people saying sell. Ultimately, our squad, we're not in a position to be selling players. Who are we going to bring in that's going to be better? Like, yeah, you can say Kylian Mbappe. Is that really going to hit the ground running? Or is that going to sort of provide sort of issues down the line? I do think so. Even though I'd celebrate the Kylian Mbappe arrival. I think at the moment, you look at our squad, we're really thin. Are we in the position to be selling players? My opinion, no. I want to see who we bring in. If we bring in 2 or 3 sort of left and right wingers, and suddenly Marcus Rashford's back up, Anthony's back up, and we have 2 guys firing. Okay, Jadon Sancho's 5th or 6th in the pecking order. Yeah, sell him. If you can get a buyer, of course. Ultimately, though, our players are running on empty. They've got nothing left. We're not selling attackers because, my God, we lack quality in the front 3. It can't be sort of just simple maths. You can't be getting rid of players, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. From my perspective, I'm not really hard on any side of the fence. I think it's a case of he's still a young player, which I think a lot of us forget. He's 23, I think. He's turning 24 this year. I think next season will be make or break. Because he's a young player, I think while it's difficult, and this is something like I'm learning as a fan, take the price tag out of it. I think that's just what we need to learn to do now, because if you look at the price of players, they'll never fulfill their price tag. 9 times out of 10, particularly Manchester United, who get absolutely rinsed every single time. If you go into negotiation and a club knows you have money, forget it. Like you got to pay, otherwise you don't get the player. So if I just look at his performances, has he performed anything to what you would consider successful? No, I don't think he has. In saying that, the ability is there. You can see it. Like you can just he does.
I don't think so much, which obviously the ability. It's the little things, and it's very boring for people. But keep in possession. We think, we don't cut back, don't keep possession, go forward, beat a man. Obviously, that's what we want as fans. As the manager, though, that's obviously why Eric Ten Hag does rate him and sort of wanted him back in the team. Hasn't sort of frozen him out. Did want him to get him back in there because obviously he's very sort of balanced and keeps the ball for the team. Now, yes, we want a little bit more than that, obviously, and for the price tag, which is hard to sort of escape, you do demand a little bit more. But ultimately, yeah, that Michael, definitely not comparing it to the Michael Carrick situation. That eye test compared to what the manager sees, they're two very different things. So, look, there's no doubt he needs to take his chance a little bit more when he comes on, and next season will be big. There's no chance that he gets sold in the summer, and I think that would be the wrong decision in terms of we're going to have a huge season next year in regards to fingers crossed Champions League football. Obviously, in all the competitions as well, we're not in a position to be selling our attackers, but who knows? New owners come in that they are going to sort of bite the bullet with 1 or 2 people, you would think. Fingers crossed Eric Ten Hag has the control, and if it was Eric Ten Hag's decision to sell him, by all means, put him on the transfer list tomorrow. Do I think that'll be the case? I don't think that would be.
If United get bought by the Qataris and there's £300 million kitty bank and Ten Hag wants someone else, then, if that's what Ten Hag wants, because I'm at this point with Ten Hag, I just trust him so much as a manager. If Ten Hag doesn't think Sancho is going to cut it, I support it.
There's a comment there from Andrew in the live chat saying he doesn't get selected for England. It's a red flag right there. I would look at some of the players I would look at some of the players who are selected for England, and that's more of a red flag. So I think in terms of Gareth Southgate's opinion on players, Jadon Sancho, it should be in that. Well, look, first of all, England are sort of well blessed in that area of the pitch. Now, it's no criticism not to be playing over Marcus Rashford or Phil Foden or Jack Grealish, are all very good players, obviously. But you do look at what Gareth Southgate and his eye for a player throughout other areas of that squad. You look, Harry Maguire starting, he's England's main centre-back in terms of when he was in horrible form. So ultimately, I wouldn't use that as a criticism of Jadon Sancho, in my opinion.
Here's an interesting question for you. Sancho and Grealish, because they were bought to their respective Manchester clubs in the same transfer window. At the time, if you were given the option of Jack Grealish or Jadon Sancho, who would you have gotten?
Tough one. I always liked Jack Grealish, but I always saw Jack Grealish as a central midfielder. In terms of not a central midfielder, but just that almost not number 10, but just that license to go in a 3-man midfield. Now, ultimately, he's brought into Manchester. That's where I thought he would play. He's obviously developed into a little bit of a wide player. But Jadon Sancho has the quality to maybe be a little bit more special than Jack Grealish. But as a player overall, I always thought Jack Grealish was absolutely brilliant. And obviously, he was Manchester
Grealish has that tenacity about him, doesn't he? And I think that's what you fall in love with as a fan.
Yeah, no,
he's got a bit of fight.
He's a top player. He's absolutely brilliant, unfortunately, that he's playing for Manchester City. Obviously, there's no doubt Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did want him. We settled for Donny van der Beek because he's obviously going to be £60 or £70 million cheaper. It ended up. So that was a clear decision for the board. Ultimately, if we did get Jack Grealish, it was pretty clear Aston Villa wanted that £100 million, which you could argue maybe is too much. So maybe it was the right decision. I'm not sure. Donny van der Beek definitely wasn't the right decision. Easy in hindsight, obviously. But look, that's not to be critical of Jadon Sancho that I'd prefer Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish is a brilliant footballer. It's one of those we're not going to get all the transfers right.
Yeah. Andrew making the point here, you need players with a strong mindset to play for United, win, lose, you take it as it comes, play for the badge. I take your point, mate, but I don't think that's really fair to – I don't think it's really fair to say Sancho doesn't have the mindset for it. I think it's just we've seen him put patches together. It'll just be about consistency. I think what will be interesting, Tom, under Eric Ten Hag, next season, if let's say we get a backup for CASEMIRO and that number 8 that we actually need, I don't think it'll be Frankie de Jong following his comments last week, but a player of that mold who can keep possession, add a bit of defensive tenacity. If United keep 10% more of the ball per match, I think the likes of Sancho will look brilliant. I really do. But let's bring it to 3-2-1s. I think there are still points to hand out. And if you are new, we will explain the 3-2-1s concept. Tom and I hand out 3 points to the best player or the most impactful player, 2 points and 1 point. And then at the end of the season, we will announce the 3-2-1 Pubcast player of the season. Tom, where are we sitting in terms of rankings so far? Who's leading the way?
I will tell you. I'll bring my phone up now. I can't bring it up on screen, but I'll have a look. Rashford is leading on. He's actually got a bit of a lead. Rashford is leading on 37 points. Then we have Lissandro Martinez on 30. And then a bit of a gap to CASEMIRO on 23. So Rashford and Martinez are quite clear at the top. Then you have CASEMIRO, Bruno, and Eriksen's still there. Eriksen's on 20. He's in 5th place at the moment. So he had one hell of a start to the season.
All right. I think what we'll do is following this round or following this match, we're not going to show you the leaderboard anymore. It's up to the players. We'll
that banner at the bottom is that's incorrect now.
Okay. Well, I'm still going to leave it there just for entertainment purposes. So, but it's a few points off, but the player order is still the same. So you get the idea. Andrew making the point, we had fast wingers. Sancho doesn't cut it. Mate, I have seen brilliant wingers who aren't quick. You don't have to be quick to be a good winger in world football. I'll tell you that for free. Adam making the point here. Martinez 3, McTominay 2, Shaw 1, or Varane. Yep, it's a fair shout. What do you think, Tom, in terms of 3-2-1s? Let me give you the floor. Who gets the 3 points for you?
I thought Lissandro Martinez. I thought dealt with everything well. Obviously, you're going to be a very busy man in terms of the way, especially the way that Southampton played, but especially with 10 men. So I thought Lissandro Martinez, I wouldn't say his best game in a United shirt, but in regards to sort of a faultless performance, you'd have to say it was pretty faultless for a centre-back. I thought he was hard to split in terms of, a partnership, who was more important. Some people might say Varane, some say Martinez. For me, individually, there were 1 or 2 counterattacks. There was one, I think it was, not Raheem Sterling. What I keep thinking Sterling's playing for Southampton. Who's the other one? Not Sterling. Who's the other? Walcott. That's the same thing. Walcott was running through free on goal, and Lissandro Martinez pretty much caught him up. And I just think, Walcott was dribbling with the ball, and Walcott sort of, it was a little bit going on a little bit of an angle, but Lissandro Martinez catch him up and put him off. He didn't win the ball, but sort of did enough to sort of put him off that shot. I thought that was a great bit of defending. I think there was another bit as well in terms of there was 1 or 2 counterattacks. It was a flashback to that game in Turkey a couple of years ago where we just threw everyone in the box and left players up on halfway, and they cleared the ball a few times. And Lissandro Martinez, I think one might have been Luke Shaw as well, did well to get back. So for me, 3 points is pretty clear in my opinion today.
I'm with you, mate. 3 points for Martinez, clear as day. 2 points and 1 point, I think, is interesting.
The De Gea for me. Big saves.
Stole the words out of my mouth. Hit big saves. Big Dave, big saves. And you know what? For the scrutiny he's come under, and what I will say is rightly so, rightly scrutinized, I thought big performance. Yeah, he's got flaws in his game, but what he does well, he does very well, and that's keep balls out of the back of the net, and he definitely did that today. So David De Gea for 2 points for me. SJ Bar, 2 points for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Very interesting, mate. 1 point for Varane.
Well, the right back situation, again, I make this point every week. I called for Wan-Bissaka to start this game because Delo wasn't at it, but then after this Wan-Bissaka performance, and it was good, I thought, just average 6 out of 10, nothing wrong with his performance or bad. I just thought, I need something more, so Diogo Delo. But ultimately, when Diogo Delo comes in, I say, not quite. I need Wan-Bissaka back in. It's a very interesting situation playing out at right back because I think both are sort of trotting along doing their job well enough, not quite sort of doing that. No one's given us an 8 out of 10 performance. They're just sitting around maybe a 6 out of 10. I'm just thinking, how is Eric Ten Hag viewing that situation? Because he's chopping and changing as much as me.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Look, my instinct, again, I'm not Eric Ten Hag. Eric Ten Hag gets paid the bucks he does because he definitely knows more about football than I do. But I think when you can't separate 2 players, particularly in defensive positions, which one is more likely to help you keep a clean sheet? I think that needs, when you're a defender, defense first. I don't care if you're Pep Guardiola deploying Bernardo Silva at left back. I don't care. You're a defender. You keep balls away from going in the back of the net first. Aaron Wan-Bissaka helps you do that.
But
At
then
the
again
moment,
today, and I thought Wan-Bissaka was good, but then again today, it was maybe his defensive things, which again with 10 men's a little bit harder in terms of maybe a little bit stretched, but there was once or twice he was caught out with the ball in behind. I think if that was Diogo Dalot would be questioned the defensive aspect of his game. But this time it was Wan-Bissaka being caught a little bit. And again, like it was a tough situation for him, not to be critical, but I just think that's where I think, maybe not quite good enough. It was good enough, but maybe like Erik ten Hag says, good enough or good isn't good enough. So 1%, I agree. At the moment, his first choice. No, I agree with that. But ultimately, sometimes you need a little bit more. It's a good decision for Erik, or good sort of headache for Erik ten Hag at the moment, I'd say.
I think the little bit more is an upgrade at right back. To be honest, I think it'll. I think in the summer, I'll be amazed if United don't buy a right back. And I've been saying at time it's going to be the third season in a row, but dead set, it's now or never. Ethan Laird, if he's going to do it, it's got to be in the summer for me. I'm starting to think it won't happen for him now, to be honest. But
I think Erik ten Hag has now also got himself in the. It's definitely not a criticism. He's got himself in the position now. He now understands what managing Manchester United is, and in terms of, I think he would love to bring a youth player in like that. You've obviously seen him introduce Garnacho a fair bit now, but it's finding it hard to get Kobbie Mainoo in. Maybe let's see a little bit more now with CASEMIRO out. But it seems like at Ajax you can sort of blood all these youngsters. You can put them in, get them their minutes. Ultimately, at Manchester United, you can't afford that. Ultimately, we like this as fans. They throw them in. Very rarely it happens because it's very sort of cutthroat nature.
Played in the Championship though for 2 or 3 seasons. I mean, I think he's a season's enough pro young player still.
No. I'll definitely like to. But in terms of Erik ten Hag's thinking, is he going to sort of rely on Ethan Laird being the backup? I think, as you're right, you do need to invest in a first choice right back if you're going to address the situation. I'd love to see Ethan Laird in there, of course, but ultimately then you look at the business. If you're seeing a future right back for Ethan Laird at Man United, what that really means is you're going to have to spend big money on a first choice and sell Dalot and Wan-Bissaka. Is that going to happen? That's 4 huge pieces of business, or 3 big pieces of business. Is that going to happen? Obviously not. So I'm just thinking Ethan Laird, just by circumstance, might find his future a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah. Adam making the comment here, you think an overlapping right back is needed to help Anthony? Absolutely, mate, 100%. Yeah. I still think Erik ten Hag wants our right back to play an inverted role. I don't think so, Adam. From what I've seen, Tom, Dalot and Wan-Bissaka are holding a very wide position on the right. I think the inverted fullback is actually coming more from the left. I think you're seeing Shaw be that tuck-in player, whereas I think on the right, it's a bit lopsided. I think he actually looks for the right back to give the width.
I think there's different, which we wouldn't be privy to, and our eyes wouldn't be able to see what Erik ten Hag is thinking. I think it's very specific sort of instructions in terms of, okay, how many numbers are there? Where's the ball? What's their situation? That's going to affect what our positioning does. I think there's so many things that are far above our pay grade, and what we don't actually see what's happening and why it's happening. And I think that is what's in, because I agree. Sometimes I see the right back in midfield, and other times I see him overlap. And I think, well, hang on, what's the difference? Now, obviously there is a difference. Erik ten Hag would be able to point that out. But it would be very extremely tactical that would fly well over our heads, in my opinion.
It would be interesting to see a bird's eye view of the way United line up. Like, I wish I was sitting in J stand, because I think that would give you a good view. But I just think if you look at, I would imagine, again, unfortunately, as you can hear from our accents, we're not based in England, but I reckon if you watch United live, I reckon you'd find when the ball is at certain points in the field, the fullback will change the space that they occupy. Because I think the biggest improvement I saw from United from the opening 2 games to now is their shape on the transition. And I think it makes a lot of sense. If you're a fullback inverted off the ball, if you're on a transition, it's a lot easier to recover. If you're a fullback and you're hugging the touchline, looking to get crosses in, and then you're on the transition, you're not getting back. So I think that's the idea behind that. But, that's something we can definitely look at in the summer as we dissect the season when United inevitably win their 2nd trophy and finish comfortably in the top 4. But anyway, did we finish 3-2-1s? I think we landed on Martinez for 2, Martinez for 3, De Gea for 2, 1 point.
Actually, the name I want to throw there, I'll throw it to you. Obviously, I'm a fan, but in terms of, we sit here at the start of the game, okay, these 3-2-1s, who had the biggest impact on us contributing to 3 points and the win? That's our goal at the start of the game. The whistle blows. Our goal is to win the game. Eric Ten Hag's thinking when that red card happens, what's Eric Ten Hag's goal? Now, deep down, wants to win the match, but ultimately, deep down, his goal might have changed. His goal might have been, if we can get a draw here, that's really a win. Considering playing an hour with 10 men, that might have been Eric Ten Hag's thinking. What was Eric Ten Hag's first action? To bring Scott McTominay in. Now, I've played in midfield when you have 10 men. It is a nightmare. It's a shocking thing to do. Scott McTominay came in, and Casemiro has been sloppy in the last two, or especially this game before the red card. He wasn't performing too well. For Scott McTominay to come in, and the job he did in regards to midfield in terms of getting himself about, a lot of clearances, a lot of blocks, a lot of tackles, in terms of contributing to not the win, but what Eric Ten Hag needed in terms of a clean sheet and a point. So his impact on the game and the job he had to do, he's well within a shout of a point to me. Now, if someone can, throw Wan-Bissaka or Luke Shaw or someone else potentially, but just a shout for Scott because he gets enough dogs abuse. I thought when he does perform well and contribute, it needs to be highlighted.
He came on and he did play well. I 100% agree with you, but can I be honest with you, Tom? And I'm sorry, you probably went
and the players around him. He's only doing that job by himself. Bruno Fernandes isn't a defensive-minded player. Jadon Sancho is not a defensive-minded player. So a tricky job for him. And Casemiro had that job as well, and unfortunately got himself sent off. But I've just been in that position. It's the worst thing in the world to play in central midfield, especially when you're a defensive-minded player with 10 men.
Tom, I'm with you. Can I be honest with you, though? I'll be amazed if he's at Manchester United next season, Scott McTominay. I think his days are numbered. Surely you agree. Regardless of what you feel and what you want, you can't think
there's a very real possibility, and a lot of that possibility sort of falls on Scott McTominay and his desire. But I also go back to this myth that, okay, Bruno Fernandes is not trusted. That's why he plays out wide. Well, no, he plays in the middle. Eric Ten Hag trusts him. The big decision to be made here where Fred or McTominay had to come on. Who was trusted?
I think Fred's played a lot of football, and I would also argue that I don't think Ten Hag looks at them. I think he looks at McTominay as Casemiro's deputy, and I think he looks at Fred as
Casemiro's going to miss 7 or 8 games a season through red cards. So again, through no huge fault of his own, in regards to this was a situation where throughout a squad, now this is not to rely on Scott McTominay throughout the season and say, okay, he's going to come in and score 5 goals or be this player or that player. In terms of filling a squad and a job, Scott McTominay will be trusted more than Fred. Now, Fred has been playing very well and deservedly played ahead of Scott McTominay, of course, but with the tools around him. At the moment, suddenly Casemiro is out. You can't play Fred in there by himself. Now, ultimately, Scott McTominay in there by himself, is that good enough? Maybe not. But ultimately, as the manager, you have to choose. It would have been horrendous to put Fred in there by himself, and that's not to be critical of him, but that would have lost us the game. So ultimately, what would you prefer? Sell Scott McTominay, play Fred, and lose the game? That's not to be critical of Fred, but that would have happened. It would have been a disaster to sit there by himself or play Scott McTominay and get over the line.
I get what you're saying, mate. I do 100%. And I don't want to sound condescending here. You know I respect your footballing opinion, but I think you're comparing apples and oranges. McTominay has only played as a 6 this season. He's never been afforded the opportunity to play as an 8. Maybe that's wrong, by the way.
Yeah, there's better players. There's better players than him in that area of the pitch, of course.
But Fred hasn't played as a 6 this season,
because
McTominay hasn't played as an 8. Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't.
That's why McTominay has to play there.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. But I think that's the point. It wasn't a case of McTominay or Fred. It was I'm choosing between my 8 and my 6, and I just got my 6 sent off, so I'm going to choose my 6. Do you get me? I don't think he looked at it as. I agree with you,
he's not a
6. I think he absolutely trusts McTominay more than Fred. That's clear, and that's why he plays Fred further up the pitch. But at the end of the day, I think he's looking at it as McTominay's my 6, Fred is my 8, my 6 just got sent off, so I'm going to bring my 6 on. I think it was as simple as that.
Yeah, no, and look, McTominay's future is definitely up in the air in regards to that. And as I said, a lot of it maybe comes down to his decision and what offers come in from other, obviously, Premier League clubs. We'll look at Newcastle. There's a situation there. Ultimately, though, our players are running on empty, Larry, completely on empty. They have nothing left. We're not in a position to be just selling players at the moment. We're not going to have a transfer window. I know people a lot of say, yeah, we're going to have new Qatari owners. This player's going to come in. If the Glazers are still in charge June, July, which is a very likely possibility, they're not going to be spending money throughout this thing because there's no point spending big money when new owners are going to come in a couple of months. So that'll be a disaster in terms of what the Qatari or Jim Ratcliffe want. So there's a very real situation where this transfer window is not going to be a pretty one. I know we're all playing Football Manager and think it could be. There is a situation where the ownership will negatively impact this transfer window. Ultimately, what the players have absolutely nothing left. We're not in a position to be selling players.
13th of March. I reckon the Glazers will announce that they're selling the club on the 1st of April just to boil piss. April Fool's joke. What do you think? I could see it. I reckon it'll be their big fuck you for all the protesting that's happened in their time as Manchester United owners. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to lean on the side of optimism. I'm an optimist by nature. United will be under new owners, ones that will invest into the squad adequately. And then we don't have to sit here and I don't have to tell Tom why McTominay shouldn't be a Manchester United player. Can I say the most loveliest bloke? When I met him in Melbourne, I was rooting for him to have an absolute belting season. Just hasn't happened for him, unfortunately.
Well, you look at the transfer window in terms of the immediate need for new owners to come in and address that. We talk about Manchester United a little bit bigger than, okay, it's not just about what we see on the pitch. We saw what the main issue as well, which might actually influence or new owners will be influenced by. We saw the toilets at Old Trafford today, flooding.
What the hell, man?
And I just think, okay, yes, we needed maybe in your midfielder number 6. Ultimately, though, we need toilets that aren't flooded at Old Trafford. And that's ultimately in terms of, as a new owner, yes, I need shiny new toys on the pitch. Ultimately, though, if my roof's leaking, and this not the roof, this is the bloody toilets. Male's toilet just full of piss on the floor. That's where the attention is going to have to be over a backup number 6, in my opinion.
Someone's definitely taken the piss. With all that being said, McTominay for the 1 point, I think. Are we in agreement?
In regards to the contribution, a lot of people won't like that because obviously their thoughts towards McTominay. But ultimately, in regards to the contribution, it's true.
Oh, I'm really proud of myself for that one.
Bruno Fernandes for a point, Marcus Rashford for a point, Weghorst for a point, Anthony for a point.
Rashford was the most likely to score. If anyone was going to score, it was going to be Marcus.
Yeah, did he?
And if the referee did his job and gave one penalty, I think we'd be talking about a Rashford 3 points, probably.
Yeah, no, look.
Well, it would have been Bruno, wouldn't it?
And I'm not saying McTominay was man of the match, far from it. But ultimately, he gets shat on far too much by this fan base. And I think if you come on Eric Ten Hag, trust Scott McTominay.
Yes and no. I mean, I think the criticism that has been labeled at him is too far, particularly for someone who has a massive platform and has blocked that person because it's bullying, basically. But nonetheless, I think he wouldn't be criticized so heavily, Tom, if I think unfortunately for McTominay, and I say the same for Fred as well. I think when they retire, both men, they'll look back at their careers and I think they'll almost have this slight resentment toward the other because I think both will look at the other and say, you know what, if I was next to a better player, I'd have a hell of a career at Manchester United.
But it kind of highlights my point. Here we are trying to say, okay, who came on, did well. Scott McTominay came in and did a good job. But that's not the discussion. It's, but he's not good enough. We need to get rid of him. Why can't we just say he did a good job?
Yeah, he did do a good job.
Yeah, but that's the discussion. That's what it is. But it always turns with him into another discussion. I just think that is where it's unfair. There's other players, okay? Someone comes in and sort of performs well, say they did well. We don't have a discussion about their future. And I just think ultimately, and I do look at it through rose-tinted glasses because he is the only player besides obviously the new signings, and obviously goalkeepers are hard to evaluate their work ethic, but he's the only player in the last 5-6 years who's given 100% in every game. Bruno Fernandes hasn't. Marcus Rashford hasn't. If the players we love, they haven't.
Bruno gives 100%, mate. I'm not having that.
No, there's been 1 or 2 times where he's given up in terms of the little incidents, not full 90 minutes, but there's times he's stuff that I'm not chasing. Scott McTominay's never done that. He's the only player.
He requested a come off, Gary Neville.
No, but before that, where Bajcetic ran through, the Liverpool player ran through him and Bruno said stuff that I'm not chasing. There has been times Bruno hasn't given 100%. Now, over his time, he has given 100%. But isolated incidents, there has been times that the players that we love haven't. Scott McTominay always has. So maybe should I criticise him for that? I don't believe so. I think he deserves a little bit of respect. And ultimately, I want to pull rank and give him a point for this. So does that mean his future is away from Man United in the summer? Potentially. Maybe it is that the best thing. But ultimately, we can sit here and say he contributed to the point, which potentially at 30-minute mark was Eric Ten Hag's main objective.
I'm still thinking about the flooding toilets at Old Trafford.
What would you? That is the issue, though. That is the issue. We're here talking about points.
No, man. Seriously, I think I think that story has been given too much air. I mean, at the end of the day, that's not a regular occurrence at Old Trafford. Someone clearly took a shit in the pisser and clogged all the pipes. I mean, surely.
I've been to Old
that's
Trafford.
what's
It's like
happening.
that. Like, that was Old Trafford years ago, and it was situations like that where you are walking through bits. The roof is leaking every single week when there's a little bit of rain.
The
And I
toilets are
just,
really run down too. Hey, it's got the like I'm trying. You know when you go into like a public toilet and it just reeks of piss? Old Trafford's toilets have that.
you walk in there and it's like a foggy haze. Like you walk into like the moisture in terms of
Yeah,
it's
mate,
just
that's called being drunk.
no, but it's a horrendous situation at all, and that's where we look at these shiny new toys for players. We need this player, we need this investment, we need to sell this player. Ultimately, we're Manchester United fans, and the stadium behind us, there, Old Trafford. That's our home. That needs to be addressed first.
I can't wait for July. Breaking news: Sky Sports. Manchester United have fixed the plumbing issue in the men's toilets at Old Trafford. It's going to be global news, I tell you. Anyway, I've been talking for too long. We've got the Real Betis return leg, so stay tuned for that preview. Tom and I will bring you that. 50 minutes of absolute shenanigans. This is why you got to tune into the United Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Let me ask you a question. Where will you find deep analysis about the football match, criticism of the referees, debates about Scott McTominay, and flooding toilets all in one video? Good luck. Good luck finding top content like that. But nonetheless, thank you for tuning in. If you are new, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We want 2K by the end of May. Help us reach our milestone by the end of the season. That will help us put more in terms of gifts, giveaways, and get involved. We love it, our community here. Tom, thank you, mate. Hope it's been fun to dissect the 0-0 loss. The 0-0 loss.
Yeah, well, look, ultimately for the Premier League, it was a 0-0 draw. It's quite a not exciting one because obviously we're frustrated, but at the end of the day, for the neutral, it's probably a good match for a 0-0 draw.
Indeed. Andrew, thank you very much. Cheers to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll catch you in a day or two with the Real Betis preview, along with any breaking news as and when it comes to us. Cheers.